Shaver Lake, which is a quick drive from Fresno and Clovis, is a nice mountain getaway for residents of the Central Valley. Sitting right between Yosemite and Sequoia National Park, it's usually known for the snow sports in the winter, hiking, camping, and water sports in the summer. Shaver is a hotspot for outdoor lovers. While many may overlook the history of the small town, it actually has a rich history. From tribes such as the Yokuts and the Mono Indians, to the successful logging industry that shaped the Central Valley as we know it, to the draining of the lake, and most recently, the devastating creek fire, Shaver Lake's history is rough, important, and inspiring. Now we look at the first known inhabitants of the Shaver Lake area, the Mono and the Yoka Indians. The first inhabitants of the Shaver Lake area were the Yoka and the Mono Indians. These tribes were extremely prevalent throughout the San Joaquin Valley for long periods of time. Certain reasons why the Yoka and the Mono Indians were so successful was due to the hunting and gathering techniques of the tribes. The Indians were famous for using diverse types of arrowheads that would assist them in hunting for the wild animals. Their hunting provided nutritious game and meat to be eaten and allowed for furs to be made in the cold winters. Also, since the natives occupied the area for such a large amount of time, they could learn hunting paths and trails that would assist them in the future. In terms of gathering, the Indians were known for using pestle and mortar type stones to grind up acorns. The acorns were first harvested, then they were left out to dry in the sun for long periods of time in burden baskets. The skills possessed by the natives allowed them to have a profitable relationship with the settlers. They were able to trade meat and berries, furs, and even guide the settlers when they first moved to the area. These guides often led them to good camping areas as well as good hunting areas. However, as time went on and as more settlers came to the area, the natives were forced out of their home.
The lumber and logging industry is the whole reason the early pioneers started moving to Shaver. Without the logging industry, there would really be no Shaver. Shaver Lake was born when a Michigan lumberman named Charles C.B. Shaver and his brother-in-law, H.W. Swift, moved to California and started the Fresno Flume and Irrigation Company in 1891. 2 years later, in 1893, Shaver built a small rock-filled dam that impounded water to form a small mill pond to support his logging operations. And just like that, C.B. Shaver created the lake that would later be named after him. A few years later, the dam would be rebuilt out of wood and new stone, but it was still far from the Shaver Lake we know today. That same year, Shaver created the first iteration of Shaver Lake. He also started construction on an amazing feat of engineering that was his 42-mile-long flume. Now, a flume is basically a long water slide for lumber used to transport wood from the sawmill in Shaver all the way down to the Central Valley. This flume completely revolutionized lumber transportation. Before the flume, wagons pulled by horses, cows, and donkeys made the long and dangerous trip down Toll House Road to the lumber yard in Clovis. But the flume allowed boards to be floated from Shaver all the way to the lumber yard, which is the Clovis Rodeo Grounds today. All they needed was about 7 million board feet of lumber to build the flume, a series of houses to fix traffic jams, and a steady supply of water. Before the flume was abandoned, it delivered over 450 million board feet of lumber to Clovis and Fresno. To put that into perspective, it would be enough wood to build around 150,000 average-size homes. The flume played a key role in not only the founding of Shaver, but also the growth and expansion of Clovis and Fresno during their early years. Sadly, the Fresno Flume and Irrigation Company went out of business in 1925, and 34 years in business. And much of the logging operations, including the flume, were abandoned. Some people have even found bits and pieces of the abandoned flume scattered throughout Shaver. C.B. Shaver was a true pioneer, and his company played a key role in creating Shaver, Clovis, and Fresno. Even though C.B. Shaver founded Shaver Lake and created the man-made lake way back in 1893, it wasn't until the Pacific Light and Power Corporation, later named Southern California Edison, rebuilt the dam that it began to look like what we have today. The modern concrete dam was built in 1927 and made the old wooden and stone dam completely obsolete. But Southern California Edison didn't bother tearing the old one down. They just left it there and filled up the lake. Yep, they covered up operations houses, a sawmill, and an old dam. But in 2012, the new and improved dam was having some problems. The dam was eroding and leaking at an alarming rate, so Southern California Edison had no choice but to drain all of Shaver Lake to make the repairs. And once they drained the lake, we were able to see part of the old dam and operations house was still standing after decades of being underwater. One report even said there were some light bulbs still screwed into their sockets. But after a couple months of repair, Shaver was going to be filled up again and bury all that history. The repairs cost tens of millions of dollars to complete, and Southern California Edison said more repairs shouldn't have to be done for at least another 100 years. So if you missed it, you likely will not see it again in your lifetime.
In recent history, Shaver Lake is known for its survival of the creek fire that ran on from September 4th to December 24th of 2020. While the exact cause of the fire is unknown, it is believed to be the combination of lightning and up-canyon winds that led to the unimaginable amount of destruction. It caused just under $200 million of damage and destroyed over 800 buildings. And the fire ended up reaching over 350,000 acres, causing it to be the fourth largest fire in California history. The fire was so powerful that it even created tornadoes. One of the tornadoes reached wind speeds of over 100 miles per hour. While there were 0 deaths, there were over 20 injuries, and there could have been much more if not for heroic firefighters. We were able to talk with the firefighter, Joe Crystal, on what it was like to experience the fire firsthand.
I knew about it before because my firefighter at the time, she lost her house.
Oh.
So as the fire was starting, I remember following it on different fire threads and calling her and saying, hey, do you see this fire? It's kind of burning towards you. And she's like, I'm fine. And then the next day, hey, it's getting bigger. We're fine. Then the third day I said, you need to get out of there. And they got out, they lost their house the next day. So when we arrived up to the Shaver Lake area for our assignment with the out-of-county engine, it was obvious that there was a lot of destruction. A lot of homes had been lost. The area that we grew up going to, every summer and every winter for activities and recreation seemed to be quite destroyed. There were a lot of signs in support of law enforcement officers and fire department. And so that was nice. We did have a lot of support from the community, and even back home, the people that weren't on the fire were trying to support the community up there by taking in livestock and doing fundraisers, water and food and housing and things like that. So the first overall perception was that a lot of that area had been burnt, and it was really sad for everybody, especially being from the area. And there was a large outpouring for the firefighters. They were bringing treats and snacks, socks, water and Gatorade, a lot of that stuff. I think that the mood of the people, it was obviously a somber mood, but they were also glad that there was support there. There were people there that truly cared about them and their belongings, of which most of the time they'd already lost. But the outpouring of people coming to the base camp and bringing anything they had was really good, and it made the firefighters feel proud to be there. Obviously, you show up to an incident like that and you always want to be able to do more, and unfortunately, with the size of the fire, the geography, the weather, there just really physically wasn't anything more that we could do. I want to say at the time it was the largest single fire in California history. It's since been beat, but because it was just one fire, a lot of times we have what are called lightning complexes, so it's multiple fires that then merge into one. This started as a single fire, and the destruction was obviously pretty bad. you could kind of see, wow, this would have been such a beautiful view back in the day. And we looked on Zillow of what the house looked like, and it was just this palatial mansion, gorgeous home. And I couldn't have even told it. You could have told me it was a gas station. I had no idea. Like, it was unrecognizable. I remember being down in one area doing the same thing, kind of just, they call it overhauling or checking for hot spots. And it was kind of where a canyon comes up, or a chute. It's like it's a real easy way for fire to travel. It goes up just like a chimney in your house, right? The air draws up and it just goes right through this chute. And all these homes were built, and the one house right in the chute was left completely fine. And it was the weirdest thing. It was like the fire just went right around it.
How did that happen?
I have no idea. There was a little bit of a natural spring in front that might have buffered it, but I have no idea. It was just crazy. And then the sad thing is imagine being that one person whose house did survive. All you're looking at is all your old neighbors' houses that have to be rebuilt. All the landscape is gone. And at what point you're like, it almost would have been better that it just burnt.
You're grateful that it's there, but you probably have that feeling like there's so little of it left, like everything else around. It's not the same.
I think the one thing that stuck out to me with the creek fire was just how close it was to home. Knowing about the fire in depth before I even got to the fire line, knowing people personally that had already lost their homes, and being back here wanting to go do anything I could to help, but also knowing that there was really nothing we could do. The fire was going to do what it was going to do, and we almost just had to sit back and wait for a pause in the environment per se to be able to get a handle on it. It was just out of control. So that was the hardest thing I remember. My firefighter, giving her a hug as she's crying because she just found out she lost her house before I'd even been up there. So knowing personally, having people storing trailers at my house who had lost their house up there, and I'm sitting here working back at the station, and then the second I get a chance to finally go up, because they okayed some more resources to go up, because our department was just stripped, to get that opportunity to go. And I knew it wasn't going to be the action-packed firefight, because a lot of that had already been done. It was going to be more dealing with the citizens coming back and seeing them try to dig through anything they could salvage, and knowing that I personally knew people, quite a few people that had already lost everything they had. I remember, my good friend, they had just bought their dream house up there, and they had all intentions of retiring there, and they talked about how beautiful their view was, and they could see the city lights at night, and they wouldn't want to be anywhere else, and for it just to be taken away, and for him to watch it be taken away is tough. It's hard.